as I've mentioned, I've gotten into running over the last year and a half and have made it a more consistent journey than my starts and stops in the past. And one of the things that I've noticed is that there are times when I'm on the middle of a run and I either get something stuck in my shoe or I've tweaked a muscle, weird something. And my natural inclination is to just cope with it. I won't actually stop and address the issue. I don't want to stop and take the rock out. I don't want to stop and stretch the hamstring out. I just want to like keep pushing forward. And I think that that has to do with my innate urge to just hurry up and get done with something, for one. I think it also has to do with my urge of come hell or high water, I'm going to be the one that wins. And ultimately, what I've realized is this is a perfect analogy to describe the difference between coping versus actual recovery. And I see this a lot in businesses, and there's a tie here with the running analogy, is that oftentimes rather than actually stopping and addressing the plan in place and figuring out, is this plan actually working to get me across the finish line with good stats without injuring myself? Or is this just a plan that allows me to cope and yeah, it'll get me there over the short term, but a few years from now, I'm going to be screwed. There's a big difference between coping and recovery. And what we have to look at is actually stopping and asking ourselves some questions about my current state of affairs to figure out, am I in a cope mode or am I in a recovery mode? So, a couple of the questions to ask yourself is first and foremost, where is my current plan falling short? So, for example, in the sales world, I might look up and go, I keep wanting to bust through 100 closed units. And for whatever reason, I just keep butting up against 80. Well, there's an issue in the plan. There's a rock in the shoe that I haven't been willing to address. Once I figure out where my plan is falling short, I might ask myself, where am I wasting time on activities that aren't actually moving me any closer to my goal? So I might have been doing something for a very long time and have a difficult time wanting to let go of it, an old idea in my mind, right? That I have to keep doing this thing when it isn't actually serving me. So where am I wasting time on activities that aren't actually moving me any closer? Then, of course, what are the rocks in my shoe that I'm too scared to stop and take out? If I stop and figure out that my administrative assistant isn't actually helping me to move my business forward, that's a scary rock to have to take out. It will push me back a little bit. I'm going to have to slow down to speed up, so to speak. But if I keep limping along and coping with the person that I have, I'm never going to reach the goals that I actually want. Then I might ask myself, am I relying on outdated methods because I feel like they're safe? And if the answer is yes, we're going to have to figure out, well, how are those outdated methods keeping me safe? Great, wonderful, but how are they actually slowing me down and holding me back from where I actually want to get to? The last question I would ask myself are, what are the habits? What are the excuses? What are the things that I keep telling myself that are keeping me from executing consistently on my plan? Right? If I tell myself I need to get up and before I go on my run, I need to actually stretch my legs so that I don't end up with a muscle cramp 2 miles into my run. Same thing here. If I tell myself I need to get up and um, meditate and take time for myself in the morning before I sit down and hit the phones to make my lead generation calls, if I don't actually do it over and over and over, I got to figure out what are the habits or excuses that are stopping me from being able to actually execute. I think it's really important to remember here, guys. Yeah, you might be able to cross the finish line, but you can't out-limp a flawed plan. Eventually, it's going to catch up with you. You may be able to hit 80 units consistently year over year, and that might be great, but it's not going to get you to 100. If it were, it would have already worked. So you can't out-limp a flawed plan. And what we've got to really ask ourselves at some point in time is, am I willing to do something different? Am I going to continue to cope or am I going to choose recovery? Ultimately, am I coping forever and ever with this discomfort of good enough, or am I willing to actually commit to recovery, pause, set my game plan for something that's actually going to accomplish what I want to accomplish over the long haul? It's your choice. You can keep coping or we can actually adopt recovery.